Hi everybody. Thank you all very much for your interest in this webinar put together by Spectronics. And I'd just like to say also that if you have any problems with the sound, or if you have any questions, please just type them in and we'll try to address any issues. And I'd also like to thank you for your interest in listening to me today. We've had a really overwhelming response to this webinar. In fact, we had well in excess of 200 registered attendees, so that's quite an honour to get to this point in the software development and have this much interest. So thank you very much. So I should probably introduce myself. So my name's Bartek Rejkowski. It's a Polish name in case you're wondering, and I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I have an intense passion and interest in literacy development and helping children to improve their literacy skills. And I'm also a PhD student, and I have a particular interest in, oh, hang on a sec, I'm just having, oh, the mouse was upside down. I have a particular interest in exploring the relationship between speech, language, auditory processing and literacy skills. So there's an emerging body of work in the literature suggesting that there's a very strong relationship between these different skill areas, and that understanding literacy difficulties definitely needs to involve an understanding of those areas and how they interrelate with each other. So I'm in the middle of my PhD right up at the moment. My thesis is due very soon. And I also have just had a baby, so I've got a 5-week-old newborn at home, as well as a 7.5-year-old. So if I say anything ridiculous, it's because of a lack of sleep and not because of a paucity of neural network architecture. So a few years back, I became very frustrated with the lack of quality research-based software that was around. I was being asked constantly to recommend software by parents and also by educators as part of my work in my private practice in Adelaide, and became so frustrated, in fact, that I thought that maybe, given the fact that I'm quite a computer nerd and have spent quite a lot of time trying to get computers to do what I want them to do, I thought I'd give it a shot and actually create my own software. So I felt that the majority of software developers were trying to target a demographic rather than expressing an understanding of the way that kids learn how to read in a software package. And so I wanted to incorporate the clinical knowledge as well as the through my readings into something that was easy to use. I also wanted to make something that was Australian made, so there's a paucity of Australian software around. It's extremely important for kids, especially kids with auditory processing difficulties and receptive language problems, to have a native accent in the software that they use. And I've seen kids get quite confused when learning, for example, letter sound knowledge and in doing auditory discrimination activities in other software, which is usually North American. So the program that I've come up with is called ReadingSounds 1 Pro, and it was first prototyped in about 2003, so it's a long work in progress, and it was first released to the market in about 2008, and lots of interesting things have happened since then. So this is actually the 3rd incarnation of the program, so we've had 3 updates, and the program's designed to easily teach crucial literacy skills to kids that are just starting out with their reading, and also to kids who are struggling with reading ability. So the program is targeted at normally developing kids aged between the age of about 4 and 8 inclusive, and it's also suitable for older kids with reading problems. So before I go ahead and demonstrate some of the features of the program, I think it's very important to just briefly give you a bit of a theoretical background. So I'm aware that this is a pretty short presentation, so I won't go into too much detail. Excuse me. But I'll just give you a bit of an explanation so that you understand where I'm coming from in the design of this program. So in a nutshell, as a broad summary, the overwhelming body of research into literacy difficulties suggests that the primary locus, or the primary area of deficit in kids with reading problems, seems to be in this area of being able to understand the sound structure of language. So kids with dyslexia, kids with specific reading impairments have, amongst other things, a specific difficulty in their ability to crack the code in written language as a consequence of their inability to reflect upon the sound structure in our language, the sound code, if you like, the phonological processing skills, or your ability to reflect upon and make sense of the sounds in language. So the relationship seems to be expressed in an inability to form relationships between, or form links between letters and letter patterns and the sounds that they represent, and then to use that information to crack the code in written language, if you like. So the relationship seems to work in both directions. So the research suggests that not only are poor readers poor at understanding the relationship between the sounds in the language and how these sounds are represented by letters, but the opposite is true too. So better readers tend to have better decoding skills, and they're more easily able to understand this relationship between letters and letter patterns and the sounds that they represent. So for example, that the sound I normally represents the sound I, or that the letters, the letter I normally represents the sound I, or the letters IGH normally represent the sound I, and then to be able to use that information to encode and decode text. So in a nutshell, the research suggests that these difficulties result in an impairment in one's ability to effectively teach oneself new words. So there seems to be this very important mechanism of decoding when one is reading, and this decoding process enables a person to teach themselves new words when reading. And if there's a difficulty in the ability to decode, then it's very difficult to teach yourself new words, and this seems to have a flow-on effect onto other literacy skills. So I won't talk too much about the theory behind the program, but I would like to just summarize what the research seems to suggest are the key components of a research-based approach to the teaching of reading. So I'll just talk about a few of those. So the first and the most broad statement that I'd like to draw your attention to actually comes from a national inquiry into the teaching of literacy, which was conducted in 2005 by the Nelson administration. It sounds very American, doesn't it? And the main recommendation from this very comprehensive review of the way that reading is taught in Australia was that a systematic phonics-based approach to the teaching of reading is the most efficacious, it's the most effective approach to the teaching of reading, and that this seems to be true both for kids with reading difficulties and for kids without reading difficulties, according to a review of the current research. So there was another document. By the way, I should mention that I will provide the Spectronics guys with a link to an executive summary for that report that I just mentioned. It's very much worth reading, and I'll provide some other materials as well that you're most welcome to download. So there's another review that was conducted in the UK fairly recently. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. It was conducted by Sir Jim Rose, and it was a similar comprehensive review of the teaching of literacy in the UK. And these were some of the key recommendations from that report. So firstly, research-based approaches to the teaching of reading should teach beginning readers grapheme, phoneme correspondences. So we need to teach kids the letters, the sounds that the letters represent, as well as the combination patterns, so longer graphemes like IGH and so on, in a clearly defined incremental sequence. Secondly, learners need to be taught how to blend sounds together when reading words. So they need to be able to say the graphemes, say the sounds that they represent, and then they need to be able to synthesize or put together the words that these sounds correspond to or make when they're joined. Thirdly, beginning readers need to apply the skill of segmenting, so breaking words up into their separate sounds, into their component sounds, in order to be able to deconstruct words, if you like, so that they can be reconstructed when spelling. So this is a precursor skill to spelling. So it's much easier, for example, to spell the word crab if you understand that the word crab consists of 4 sounds and that those sounds can be represented by the letters C, R, A, B. Lastly, there should be a direct teaching of words which are not phonetically regular. So for example, with a word like said, the AI pattern in the middle would normally say, or correspond to the phoneme or the sound A, like in rain. whereas in the word said, obviously it doesn't do that. So said is an irregular word, and words such as those need to be taught in a slightly different approach, with more emphasis on rote learning and more emphasis on a whole word and a visual approach to their teaching. There are a number of other recommendations in that report. I'd encourage you to read it. There are also sections on encouraging or facilitating reading fluency and the relationship between language skills and reading comprehension and various other very useful things in that report. So again, I'll provide a link to that. So in summary, we know quite a lot actually about how to teach kids to read, but the problem is that reading is a very complex cognitive process which involves a whole lot of different sub-skills, and the teaching of foundation reading skills effectively is not an easy task for educators and for parents and indeed for therapists. So that brings me to the objective of the software. So ReadingSounds 1 Pro attempts to provide a software. I'm very reluctant to use the word solution, but it's another tool in the battery of tools that you can use to try to target these crucial skills in order to facilitate literacy development. So what I'd like to do next is actually swap over to the program itself and give you a bit of an overview of how it works and some of its features. So I'll just exit from here. So can everybody hear me okay? I'd love it if you could just type a yes or an okay or something like that if you can for Greg, so that he can be assured that that you guys can hear what I'm saying. Oh, look at all those yeses. Brilliant. Thank you guys. That's great. It's nice to know I'm actually in some company here, because these online presentations are quite odd to sorry, I'm just doing something else at the same time and I can't seem to do two things at once. Quite odd things to present, because I am used to speaking in front of live audiences and I like interacting with people. So it's nice to see all of your yeses. Thank you. Okay then, so this is just a splash screen for the program. Now this is the login screen, so I'll just mention a couple of things about this. First of all, I should mention that this webinar process does mess with the sound in the program quite a lot. So you'll notice that some sounds are very loud and some sounds are very soft, and it will sound a little bit odd at times. So my apologies in advance for that. It's just part of the nature of the software that we're using to present it. So I'd like to start by pointing out that there's this help box or button at the top right of the screen. So the objective in the program was to make the software to facilitate as steep a learning curve as possible. So if you're ever in trouble in the screen, you don't know what to do, just try clicking this question mark.
This is the login screen.
And you'll actually hear
box at the bottom.
You'll actually hear me give an explanation of what the screen is for and also how to use it. The other thing I should point out is whenever you put your mouse over something on the screen, then there'll be there's a little help bar down the bottom, which some people just don't ever really notice, but it actually tells you exactly what every button does, exactly what every section does. So for example, you can see that so once you have selected a name, click this button to log the student in and go to the main menu. So be aware that that's there and help is available. So I'm going to log in as Greg. Greg's been learning his letter sounds. He's doing quite well. So this is the main menu screen, and from this screen, oh, I didn't realise there was a bit of a delay there. Sorry guys, I'll slow down a bit. So this is the main menu screen, and the objective was to arrange this main menu screen in a way that really reflects some of those main skill areas that I was talking about previously with the inquiries into the teaching of literacy. So generally speaking, you want to go from start at the top here and move downwards. So what I'll do is I'll go into a letter sounds activity, and so this is the letter sounds menu where you can select a whole lot of preset letter sounds activities, and then there are some customization options which I'll talk about in a bit more detail shortly. I should point out also that in this new version there is a capacity for getting help with these options as well. So by the way, I should mention, if anybody listening already has the software and it looks a little bit different, if you've got a purple bar up the top and if you don't have these question marks, that means that you're using a previous version and you just need to upgrade it to the latest version, which is a free process. So just email us if you're not sure how to do that. So in any case, you can click these question marks.
The manual button in this box to manually adjust the start and end score.
And you'll get an explanation for what these options do. So I'll just go ahead and load a letter sounds activity. So let's say we'd like to teach a student just their vowel letter sounds.
Let's play a listening game. This game will teach you the sounds that the letters make. I will say a sound, and you use the mouse to click on the right.
So I'm just going to interrupt those instructions, but I wanted you to hear a little bit of those instructions because
click the green man to start the game.
I just wanted to point out that all the instructions are presented
to hear the instructions.
are presented in a non-written format. So one of the things that I would notice in other software was that quite often the instructions were presented in a written format, which is obviously pretty useless for a person who's just learning their letter sounds. So all of the instructions are presented in simple language with lots of visual support to help kids to understand what they're supposed to be doing very quickly. So in all of the activities, the targets to be learned are presented on this matrix, which we call the rapid learning matrix. So the matrix, in this case, contains a whole lot of objects, as you can see. You can have complete control over how many objects appear on the screen at the same time, and I'll show you how to adjust those shortly. I should point out that these little squares that you see here correspond to the number of times that the student needs to identify that particular target correctly in order to eliminate it from the activity. And as I play the activity, you'll see that there will be some stars in there, and those stars correspond to the number of times that I've correctly identified each target. So the objective in all of the activities was to essentially hold the hand of the student all the way through from completely supporting their learning with a multisensory scaffolding approach. So we actually provide lots of visual support, and then we provide lots of auditory support. And I should also point out that there's an articulatory support screen here, and that's there as a consequence of research that suggests that kids with reading problems tend to have articulatory awareness issues. So that's one reason why that's there. The other reason that's there is because the other philosophy that I wanted to follow in the program design was to explicitly demonstrate to kids what the messages that we're trying to get across. In other words, so rather than explaining to a child these are letters and they represent sounds in the language and the sounds are made by the mouth, that's quite a lengthy explanation. So I thought it was a much easier and more effective way to communicate that message by simply demonstrating it. So you'll see what I mean when I get started.
Can you find a, like in apple?
So you'll see that at this first level, when I haven't got anything right yet, it's simply, we're just doing a picture matching task. So we've got maximum support here.
Whoa. Can you find a, like in apple?
Now guys, I'll have to apologise about that sound, because that's actually the software that we're using that's really exaggerating that. It doesn't normally do that. So if you were just blown by that, I'm sorry about that, but it's going to be doing that for a while.
A, like in find a, like in e, like in a.
Now you'll see, as I'm completing these targets,
way to go. Oh,
you notice that the scaffolding
orange.
system is actually changing. So you can see that the visual support is fading out from behind the targets that I'm identifying. The more often I correctly identify a target, the less visual support we get. So it actually fades from something that's very easy for the kids to identify to the target that we're actually after. I'm just going to run out of time here. That's okay.
You ran out of time.
You'll also notice that that scaffolding system isn't just visual. So the auditory scaffolding system actually adjusts itself based on the student's performance also. So initially, the program will say, can you find "ot" like in orange? Then it will say, can you find "ot" like in orange? And then the next time it will say, can you find "ot" like in? And it actually chops off that last bit that we want the kids to remember, because it's trying to tap into the same sort of associative memory mechanisms that you would be very familiar with when you hear something like, if I say fish and of course your brain just pops in with chips because you've heard that phrase so often. So we're trying to cue the kids auditorily as well as visually. I'll just keep going. Whoa, sorry about that. It's just that one particular sound that's being exaggerated, I'm afraid. Sorry, guys.
Orange. I, like in insect. O, like in orange. I, like in insect.
Now I'd like to point out what happens when a student makes an error as well.
Wow, nice job. Oh, like in...
Okay, so let's say this student for some reason confuses two of these targets.
Like
so let's say that they confuse,
like
let's just do a weird error. Let's say they confuse I and E. So let's say they can't hear the difference between them and they press the wrong one.
Like in egg, you found E. Like in egg, can you find I? Like in insect.
So you'll notice a few things. First of all, the scaffolding for the target that I incorrectly identified resets itself to its maximum again. So the student will receive maximum support and more repetition on that particular target because the program's identified that I'm not familiar enough with that one yet. The other thing that will happen is that it presents the target that I didn't find in a picture matching task again, and so that's quite a lot easier to find. And then that target will have its scaffolding reset to the maximum level as well. Whoa.
Like in umbrella. Like in.
So you'll see that the program actually very quickly eliminates the targets that are easy for the student.
Awesome work. Oh.
And then ouch, it's hurting me too. Okay, so you can see that the result is that we've ended up with the two targets that we had trouble identifying. Now guys, turn your volume down because I know that for some reason the music at the end of this bit is very loud. Rock out. This will be loud too. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, we don't really know why it's doing that. Obviously, the sound is a lot more balanced than that normally. But anyway, congratulations, Greg. You got first place. So there are. I'm sure you can see there are all sorts of reinforcements that help the kids to, first of all, feel very positive about what they're doing, but also to encourage rapid responses and accurate responses. And all of the activities have this self-adjusting system which identifies visual and auditory discrimination issues automatically as the students are using the program. There was also a timer bar at the bottom of the screen, which I believe you guys couldn't see. The timer bar also facilitates rapid automatic responses because we want to encourage fluency in these skills, and we need kids to identify the targets and be able to name them as quickly as possible because that's what you need to do when you're decoding. So I'll just go back to the letter sounds activities for a second, and I'll show you how you can customize the activities. So that was just a default vowels activity with the scaffolding at the beginning of the activity. What I can do is actually turn that scaffolding system on and off using this mnemonics button. So if I click the Start Without button, the activity will be exactly the same if I press the vowels one, but we'll start without the visual backdrop. And if the student makes a mistake, the scaffolding system will come back into play again. So it's very useful, for example, to put the program into manual mode, and let's say you have a student who's been practicing all of their letter sounds, but you just want to make sure that they're remembering and retaining the information, and you also know that they still do confuse a couple of them. So what you might want to do is this kind of thing. And what this means is that the student will have to get each target right one time only, but if they make a mistake, then they'll have to get each target right, or the ones that they got wrong anyway, 8 times in a row. So what I might do is I'll just show you an activity like that so you have an understanding of this scaffolding system adjustment and how it works. So I'm loading an activity which is a much higher level than the previous one that you saw.
Let's play this.
More difficult. So you can see this time we've got all of the letter sounds on the screen at the same time, and you'll see that we've got all these little blue stars here. And this activity will act as though the student has already correctly answered each tile 7 times, and they only need 1 more to get it right. So what this enables you to do is to very quickly filter out the letter sounds that the student is familiar with while identifying problem areas very quickly. I'll just give you a demonstration.
Can you find? Can you find?
Wow, that's loud. Okay, so let's say that the student makes a mistake.
Like in snake, you found like in snake? Can you find like in fan?
Okay, so you can see guys, that,
Find
that the program has identified that we have trouble discriminating between these targets. And you can see if I keep playing, the other ones that the student is confident with will be eliminated very quickly.
Do you want us?
I'll move on now to a blending activity, and I'll show you how this works. Actually, before I do that, I'll do one more thing. If you want a higher level of customization, then you can go to this custom activity option down here in the letter sounds menu. And if you click on that, then that will actually enable you to specify exactly which targets to include.
Tile selection screen from this screen.
Okay, so let's say that I was doing, let's say a jolly phonics sequence in my letter sounds teaching, and I wanted to say to use the program with a very low-level student who was just starting out. So what I could do, now this would be loud, this beeping, unfortunately. Okay, so they're the first three letters from the jolly phonics sequence, SAT, and what I could do is save those. You see, so I'll put them in here.
Save activity screen.
And call them something.
Created custom activity.
Okay, so you can see that I've saved that particular selection, and then if I want to play it, I just simply click this tick button. So sometimes people get confused about the difference between these buttons, so I'll just explain these very, very briefly. So once you've made your selection on this screen, so you click on the tiles to select it, and click on them again to deselect the tiles. Then you can either immediately play the activity by pressing the tick button, and that won't save your configuration, or you can press the save button and save that configuration and call it something, and then get back to this screen and then press the tick to actually play the activity. You can also print the list that you've generated and put that into a student records folder or something like that, or you can also make adjustments to that scaffolding system like I described before. So for a very, very low-level student, for example, you could reduce the end score to only 2, which means the student would only have to identify each target twice to eliminate it from the game. And also, because we've reduced the end score to only 2, and we haven't put any stars in, if you like, the student will also get maximum scaffolding support on those targets. So my suggestion is to have a muck around with the scaffolding system yourself before you try it with students, because it becomes very evident once you've had a bit of a muck around with it and how it works. So I'll exit from here, and now let's say that you've done some work on letter sounds with let's say a 6-year-old student or an older student with reading difficulties, and you feel that their letter sound knowledge is really getting quite good, and they're ready to try to apply that knowledge to actually decoding words. So I'd recommend that you go to the blending activities next.
This is the blending menu.
And now I'll just reduce the number of tiles to 3. I'm just reducing the number of targets because I want the activity to play through quickly so you can see the teaching mechanism in action. I'll mention something else about this screen as well. Down here you can see there's a vocabulary box, and this actually allows you to control the frequency of words in the language, that are included in this particular activity. So if you leave it on level 1, then you have very high frequency words, in other words common words in the English language. So cat is a very common word. Whereas if I put this setting on level 2, you can see we've got RAM up here. So RAM is also a CVC word. So CVC corresponds to consonant, vowel, consonant. So that's the sound structure of the word, or the letter structure in this case. In this case it's both. And you can have some control over the level of vocab. So you can also put it on all words, which means it will use a combination of level 1 and level 2 words. So I'm just going to leave it on level 1 for now. I should also mention at this point that we realise that people may have some questions as I'm presenting, and what we'd like to do is to leave some time at the end for me to answer any questions. So if you've got a burning question about something, please just hold off, if you could, just until the end, and I'll definitely make some time to answer everybody's questions. So I'll just load one of these default CVC activities.
Let's play listening.
Okay, so we've got
Click the green
3 CVC words presented in this activity, And
help button.
Again, the objective in all of the activities in the software is to hold the hands of the students all the way from being completely assisted to completely not assisted within the same activity, with lots and lots of control and adjustment for each tile or each target based on student performance. So if you could bear that in mind as I go along.
Can you find app, lap? She put her hands on her lap.
So at this maximum level of scaffolding support, you can hear that the program's actually doing a lot of the work for me. It's
Can you find
again, excuse us for that loud noise.
This is a cowboy hat.
So at this maximum level, it actually sounds out the letters, it blends the word for the student, and it also provides a sentence. So the program will actually teach the kids vocab as necessary.
Sit. Sit. She likes to sit on the ground. Sit. Sit.
So you notice that time there's no sentence because I've got that one right once.
Brilliant work. App.
Now I've done that one twice, so you can see that it's not sounding the letters out for me anymore. It's actually showing me that I need to go from left to right.
Sit.
You can't go backwards, by the way.
It.
So it's actually sounding out the words for me. Now this time, because I've got this one right 3 times, it's still providing me a visual cue, but it's not doing the sounding out for me. And at this last level, you can see that it's independent decoding. So I actually have to decode this word by myself. Sit. And again, just like with the other activities, if there are certain targets or certain words that the student confuses, the program will provide more support and more practice on those confused pairs.
No.
So I'm just, sorry, I probably did that very quickly. So just from the main menu, if I go to the blending activity again, the blending sub-menu, what I'd like to do next is to just show you some of the customization features in the blending activities. So this is
custom word selection screen.
So this is actually probably one of the screens that I use most in our clinic, or we all do actually. Because this screen allows you to exercise complete control over the word structure in blending tasks. So this is extremely useful for educators, but also very useful for parents if they want to put in word families and various other patterns that the student might confuse. I'll just demonstrate it. So let's say, for example, I put in an A in the middle of this 3-letter word. So the word type is visible down the bottom here. I'm not sure you can see that because unfortunately we're being cut off down the bottom slightly. But this is where you select the word type. So we've just got this on CVC words, and I've put an A in the middle of this structure, this word structure, and you can see on the right side here the program has generated a list of CVC words with A in the middle. So there's a very, very large library of targets in the software. There are about 6,000 multimedia files, and I can't remember how many words, but it's a lot. And so you can be quite specific about which words to include. So let's say, for example, I want to include only AN words. So you can see we've got a bunch of CVC AN words. It's also possible to add another type of word pattern to contrast that with the first one. So let's say we want AN words and AT words. So you can see now we have CVC words with AN, AT in them only. And there's no restriction on how you select those patterns. And you can also select up to 8 different word patterns. So there's quite a lot of control over the types of words that you want to include in your blending activity. And again, you can load and save those lists. You can also print the lists so you can use them in other, for other resource building or whatever. And you just press the print button and it will print that list out on the default printer. So you can, of course, choose different types of words. So if I click this word type button, you can see now I have CCVC words, so consonant, consonant, vowel consonant words. So I could, for example, work on consonant blends, starting with, ST. So there's stab, stem, step, stop. So they're all ST words, and as you can see, there's no limit. So if you knew, for example, that a student confuses ST words with SL words, then you can very easily create an activity that contrasts those two with each other. So getting back to the main menu, I'll just show you a segmentation activity as well.
This is the segmentation menu.
So the segmentation tasks are the opposite. They promote the opposite process to the blending tasks. So these tasks teach kids how to construct words based on the letter sound knowledge that they've learned. So I'll reduce this just to 2 tiles, and just for consistency's sake, I'll keep doing the CVC words. But just for a RAS, let's put it on level 2. So level 2 vocab. So this type of task is really a precursor to spelling.
Word making.
And it will very explicitly show the kids how to construct the words based on the letter sound knowledge that they've learned.
Can you make mag?
So bear in mind, I put the vocabulary on level 2, so we've got some
for magazine.
More difficult words vocab-wise. So you can hear it gives the student the definition. So it actually teaches them new vocab. So mag is short for magazine. And you can see it's actually showing me which ones to press here. And you can see we've got visual support. As I move the mouse around, you can see the little mnemonics that the kids have learnt in the letter sounds task. Help them to remember what sounds the letters make.
Can you make mag? G.
As this activity continues, just like in the other ones, the level of support will reduce until the kids are constructing these words without any support. It's also possible to use a keyboard attached to the computer in this task, and that's quite a useful feature, because if any of you are using alternative keyboards, so there are some pretty cool keyboards around with lowercase letters and color coding and things like that. They can be used with the program. The other thing I should point out is that, I'll just wait for that in case that's making me hard to hear.
You ran out of time.
There are a lot of other very shut up me. That's my voice. There are a lot of other very subtle features in the software. So for example, visually similar targets are always presented together. So the kids are always practicing reinforcing between similar targets. So you can see PB and D are all in one line. But with that scaffolding support system behind those letters, we find that when kids are practicing to discriminate from the beginning with that scaffolding support, they actually end up learning the differences between the targets really well. I should point out a couple of other things about the activity screen. So this is the repeat button.
Mag.
And there's no limit to the number of times that the students can have the activity repeated, so the program is infinitely patient. These yellow dots down here, the little yellow squares, correspond to lives, and most kids are very familiar with the concept of a life system in computer software. So we didn't want the program to kind of keep presenting targets to students if they find them, just in case somebody sets up an activity that's too difficult. So after, I think it's 12 consecutive incorrect responses, the program will finish the activity and provide a message to the student like, great try, but you've run out of lives, so please try again, something like that. The other thing I should point out is that there's no negative language in the software at all. So when a student makes a mistake, you won't ever get the program doing a or that was incorrect, or try again, or anything like that. It simply states, this is just a reflection of how we approach kids with with learning difficulties in our clinic. We never say anything like that. All we do is just point out the facts. So it'll say you found A, can you find B? It will never say you didn't find B, can you please find A? I'm sure you get the idea. So all of the messages in the program are like that. So if the student runs out of time, it'll just say you ran out of time, can you find blah? So I thought that was pretty important. Okay, so the Consonant Blends menu is very similar to the other ones in its format. We wanted there to be consistency between the different menus in order to make the program easier to use. So you can choose 2-letter or S blends, you can choose 3-letter C blends, and you can choose them based on frequency here with the default activities, and then you can use the custom activity screen to select specific consonant blends to work on. I won't talk about this one too much because I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking to you about this word grids activity. How are you going for time, Greg? 5? Yep. Yeah, no worries. Okay, then maybe I won't spend as much time on the word grids activity. So the word grids activity just allows you to present entire words on the screen at the same time. And you've got similar sorts of controls to the ones in the blending and the segmentation menu, so you can be very specific about the types of words that you present in the activity. But I'd like to point out another feature that most people don't know about. So I've just gone into the custom activity screen in the word grids activity. Now, for some kids, it's very important to practice auditory processing skills before they do reading. So as an example, there are some, so Indigenous kids learning to read have the extra challenge of having a language that's quite different in its sound structure to English. So for example, they don't have any contrast between what we call as speech paths, voiced and voiceless plosives in their language. In other words, that sounds like p as in pat and b as in bat. So for them, pat and bat actually sound exactly the same, because in Indigenous languages, as far as I know all of them, the Australian ones anyway, there's just no difference between a voiced sound, one that's produced with the larynx buzzing or the voice box buzzing, and one that's produced without the voice box buzzing. So another example of a sound like that would be s and z. So you might want to set up an activity, for example, let's just use that P and B example, where you get students to auditorily discriminate between those two patterns. So actually, I'll just go back a step. So you can see just by typing in AT, wait a second, there we go. I've got a list of words that end in at. Now what I can do next is actually click this pictures only task, so that instead of displaying whole words on each tile, the program will actually only display the pictures and will teach the vocab if necessary, but will present an auditory discrimination task where the kids simply have to hear the difference between the words and identify the correct word. So I'll just show you very quickly.
Can you find cat?
So you can hear it's just a word identification task.
Find rat.
So that's quite a useful feature.
Do you want?
Not for everybody, of course. All right, the E-rule.
This is the E-rule menu.
So this is, I'm referring to some people call it the magic E or the bossy E, or the diacritic E. It's got a lot of names. The silent E, mysterious E. So that's taught using a minimal pair approach, which means that we contrast words like win with wine and app with ape. And we find that that's a very intuitive way for kids to learn about that. And I won't talk much about that because we don't have all that much time left. But I'm nearly finished. So I'm now going to go into the sight words menu. So this is just found here in the top right. And this menu allows you to select from the 200 included sight words in the software. And you can select them based on word frequency. So for example, if I press second 25, the activity will generate a the program will generate a sight words activity based on the second 25 most common words in English. And again, we can control how many words we present, as well as the word length. So I could, for example, choose to select 14 randomly selected sight words from the second 25 most common words in English, and I could make them all 4 letters long. So we'll get 14 of the second 25 most common 4-letter words in English. If I press this one, it'll be 14 of the second 25 most common 3-letter words in English. And if I select the all option, then it will select words from the entire library of words. So there are 200 words. The other thing that's possible to do is to go into the custom activity screen and actually specify exactly which words you would like to be included in your sight words activity. So there they are, and you can cycle through them just like that. And you just, in order to select them, you just simply click on them. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that, that menu because it's very, very useful. Just a couple of other things. Everything in the program is testable. So Greg, for example, did a letter sounds test just previously, and I'll show you his results. So if I just leave it on test and click letter sounds, then the program will present a letter sounds test. The tests are presented very much like standardized psychometric assessments. So they present the items randomly. They are bought after a certain number of incorrect responses, and they're very much like a standardized test. And they provide a very comprehensive result. So I'll just show you what a result screen looks like for a letter sounds test. Here's one I prepared earlier. So Greg's done this test. You can see that he's These are the targets presented in the test on the left. You can see these ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that Greg needs some help with. So Greg's having some trouble discriminating between at and for example. So Greg could be Dutch because the Dutch language actually has the letter A in the Dutch language corresponds to the sound a. So that could be an ESL issue. Greg's also having some trouble probably hearing the difference between x and s. And this one could be a visual error, possibly. So he's also having trouble with b and b. In any case, you've got a summary which you can print out by printing this print button. There's some summary information here, like the total time taken and the average time for each target to be identified. So these numbers in the middle of these bars correspond to the time taken to identify that particular target. As Greg does the tests, you'll see that when you try the program yourself, that each test is logged on this bar graph, and so you can very quickly see the progress of the student. And you can actually cycle through those different assessment results as well, so you never lose the data. I've got, I think, 2 other points to make, and I'll wrap up. Everything in the program is also printable on flashcards. There are about 2,500 flashcards available from within the software. And all of the flashcards, so I'm just going into a CVC flashcard menu. Again, with a little bit of experimenting, I'm sure you'll find that pretty easy to negotiate. So I just wanted to point out that the flashcards also have a queuing system. So at this highest level of queuing, the flashcards have a picture to reinforce the meanings of the words, a sentence with the word to be identified highlighted, the word to be learnt, a visual backdrop to help kids remember their letter sounds, as well as the word actually printed on the flashcard. So if we drop that to level 1, then you can see that the picture and the sentence, pictures and the sentences have disappeared, but we've still got the visual backdrop to help kids remember their letter sounds. And if we drop that back to level 0, then they're more like traditional flashcards. So again, just to print the flashcards, you click this printer button and it will print them out for you. They're very high quality images, so some people print them on A3 printers and they look great. So there is more that I could tell you, but I would like to wrap up. However, there's one more point I'd like to make also. If I exit from the program, people often ask me about, now, can everybody see this? Greg? I need to just bear with us for a second, guys. Oh, I need them to see this screen. Okay. Just bear with us for a second. Which one is it? This one? We're just trying to refresh the screen, guys, so you can see my desktop. Okay, there it is. So when you install the program, the program will actually install 3 icons on the desktop. This is the actual software icon, so that's the one that you run the software with. And then it also installs 2 other icons. This one is the manual, so that's a PDF manual which you can search. It's quite comprehensive. Please read it. I wrote it. It's the only manual I've ever read, so I'd appreciate it if you read it. If you read it too. Now, what I was going to talk about was this student records folder. So if you double-click on this student records folder, there is a file for every student that has ever used the software, and there is a record of everything that that student has ever done in the program. Where is it? There we go. So you can see, for example, that the last thing that Greg did was on the 18th of the 5th. He completed the activity. The activity took 3 minutes and 59 seconds. These were the targets that were presented, and these were the errors that Greg made. So it actually shows you a summary of the errors he made, which makes it very easy to plan his next session. So important to note that. I'm going to wrap up now. The other thing that I should mention, because it's a question that gets asked really often, is whether people often ask me if we have network licensing for schools for the software, and the answer is happily yes. We've just released a network version of the program just a couple of months ago, and we're getting some great feedback about that. So if you're wondering about that, it is possible to run it on a school network, which means that you can install it on all computers in a school, and then the type of network license determines how many can be run simultaneously. So you can install it on 1,000 computers, but with, say, Network 5 license, you can run it on 5 computers at the same time, but it can be run anywhere in a school. So with that, I'd like to finish this section of the presentation. And what I'd like to do now is I'm aware that there are some questions that people have asked. So I'd like to go ahead and read some of these questions, and then I'd like to answer them, hopefully, if I know the answers. So just bear with me a second. I'm just looking at another. Where's the first one? Maybe there, Greg? Okay. Yep. So Mel has asked, she's written, the graphics are certainly suitable for younger students. Are there others which would be more suitable for older students working at a basic level? I'm thinking about age appropriateness. So that's an excellent question, Mel. We have, there are two things I'd like to say. First of all, we've used this this software with people all the way up to adult to strengthen very basic skills like this if that's what's required. What I find works really well with older students is if you explain to them that this is a tool that was developed for younger kids, but it's very useful for us to do it together. And I find most of the time when you have that kind of an approach, the kids are very understanding and they quite enjoy using it. The other thing that I'd like to draw your attention to, and I won't go into the program again because I don't want to be flipping screens, but there is actually an option in the software to turn off the rewards. And when you turn off the reward animations, the program feels a lot more mature, if you see what I mean. So there won't be the bells and whistles. We won't have stuff popping up when you get things right. There won't be as many animations and sounds and so on. It just runs very much like a more mature program, I suppose. So that's the other thing to consider. The other thing that I would like to mention, that's also very suitable, a very useful feature for students with on the autism spectrum, because we have had feedback about, we usually get very positive feedback from parents and teachers using the program with students on the autism spectrum, because as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of those guys absolutely love using computers. But we had some feedback along the lines of, the program's great, but my child gets so into it that he's completely obsessed with the rewards, and the animations and stuff. And that's another reason that we added in version 1.2, we added the option of completely turning those rewards on and off, and you can also increase or decrease the reward volume too. So yeah, we have had some experience with people using it with kids on the autism spectrum, and the feedback by and large has been really good. The other thing to keep in mind is that we do have a 7-day free trial on the net. So if you're interested in trying it with a particular student, you can download the trial and it will function as a full version of the software for 7 days. The only problem is sometimes school IT settings prevent downloads and so on, but there are ways of getting around that. So I'll just look at some of these other questions. Okay. So Belinda is asking about how long kids should spend on the software, and also how we go with maintaining the children's interest for that period of time. So ReadingSounds 1 Pro is definitely a very, for want of a better phrase, a learning intensive experience for kids. So that there aren't any wasted moments during the activities, if you see what I mean. The child is always listening to targets or identifying targets, and so it is a learning intensive experience, and for that reason we recommend that that sessions are kept quite short. So typically I wouldn't do a session on the program which lasts longer than somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes, depending on the level of concentration of the student. As a rule of thumb, I think it's a good idea to stop the activities at a point where the student would still happily do more, and to say something like, okay, we've run out of time for that one, and we're going to do something else, perhaps a flashcard-based activity or something like that. So short sessions more frequently are better than long sessions infrequently, most definitely. The other thing to mention is that we do find that kids engage with the software really, really well, generally speaking. So most feedback that we have is, well, I have to say it's overwhelmingly positive in terms of, this is one of the strengths of the software, is it does engage kids. But it's very important to pick the activities, pick appropriate activities for the student's level. So the best thing to do is to spend some time on the program before you use it, to get an idea of what's possible and the customization that's possible, and then perhaps to start with a with a low level and easier activity just to make sure that the student's confident, and then make adjustments from there. So I'll have a look at some of these other questions. Okay, so somebody's asking me if we have any apps for the iPad. Well, it's funny you should ask, because we're actually working on an iPad app at the moment. This particular program we may make for an iPad in the future, but it's a very complex program. It involves about 150,000 lines of code and 6,000 multimedia files, and it took a really long time to make. So to redo it for iPad isn't really commercially possible for us at the moment, because it's a very expensive process. So we do have plans to make some version of this for the iPad. However, we are making another piece of software at the moment for iPads. So do keep an eye out, because we should have a prototype of that out hopefully within a few months. Another question that we're asked quite often is whether or not there's a Mac version. So it is actually, I'm actually presenting this program to you as we speak on a Mac computer. So the answer is it is possible to run it on a Mac, but there isn't a Mac-specific version for it. So what you need to do is to run something like Boot for Mac, which enables you to run Windows on a Mac computer. So most people who buy new Macs now have both operating systems installed, and if you have both operating systems installed, then you can certainly run the program. Okay. Right. Somebody's asking me if I'm familiar with the Lexia program, and also asking me how well does it complement Lexia. Well, I am familiar with the Lexia program. I think by and large, the Lexia program is quite good. I think it's got strengths and weaknesses. One of the things that I really love about it is the depth of information that's available for the analysis of student records in that program. We'd like to come up with something, as nice to use and as comprehensive as that at some point in the future. But in terms of how well it complements the Lexia program, well, what ReadingSounds 1 Pro does, Lexia is quite a comprehensive tool which goes from basic skills to high-level skills. What this program does, ReadingSounds 1 Pro, I think, is it's extremely good at teaching the foundation level skills. So in that regard, it complements the Lexia program perfectly, because it strengthens those areas that are most fundamental in establishing reading and writing ability. And then after that, it's certainly possible to use as a complement a more general program like Lexia. I would recommend that you download the trial and have a try, have a muck around with it. But you're certainly not going to contradict anything in any other program. The research suggests that these skills are extremely important in establishing foundation literacy skills, and the software, certainly based on what we've observed, the feedback that we get, and our clinical experience, does a very good job of that. So you won't be interfering with any learning process, that's for sure. Okay, so another question I've been asked is what's the maximum number of students that the program will cater for? So there's actually no limit to the number of students that the program will store data for. This was one of the things that I really wanted to incorporate in this software, because I was a bit annoyed by what they call consumable software products. So once a student has gone through the program, then that's it. You need to buy no license, or you've got 4 student spots and that's all that's available. So there's actually no limit in answer to your question. So you could disperse an entire school with one installation. What I'd like to do at this point, actually, guys, is I do need to wrap up our webinar, and again, I'd like to very sincerely thank you for your time and for listening. It really is an honour to spend all that time developing the program, and hoping that there was an audience for it and other people would see the value in it, and to have so much interest in the software. So thank you again. And if you have any other questions that we didn't get to, please do email us, and we'll answer via email. and again, there's more information on the Reading Doctor website as well as on the Spectronics website. So our website is readingdoctor.com.au, and I'm sure you're all familiar with the Spectronics website. So feel free to contact us, feel free to give us a call and have a chat, and we love hearing from people all over the place. So thank you again, and I'll sign off now. And yeah, if you come across me at any seminars and you've heard me talk before, do come and say g'day, because I get a great buzz out of talking to people. So thank you again, and cheerio.